So I've actually got a talk about communicating liberty, and I was going to talk a little bit about a couple organizations I work with, Students for Liberty and Liberty on the Rocks. I know we're pressed for time right now, so if I get to the end of that part of the talk, and it's better for me to push those to tomorrow, I can definitely do that, and I'll leave that up to the organizers to sort of, shoo me off the stage. Now, I'm affiliated with the Australian Taxpayers Alliance, Australian Libertarian Society, Students for Liberty, Liberty on the Rocks, and I'd like to thank the Australian Taxpayers Alliance for allowing me to be here today, paying for my flight up. Oh. Oh dear. Can we get that full screen? So, well, basically, and I think this is an uncontroversial topic to this crowd, that liberty is a great product. All right. That, in general, we all sort of agree that peaceful cooperation is far preferable to its alternative. Mutual recognition of self-ownership allows us to pursue our own subjective value, and that freedom to produce and innovate literally gives us longer, happier, wealthier lives. It's basically the means to all other ends that we value. However, despite it being such a great product, it's not universally popular. And of course, as this room evidences, that strong proponents of liberty do exist, but strong proponents of all philosophies exist. And the median citizen is not usually in any one of those groups. In fact, they're usually driven by one of two things rather than a strong political ideology. There's a sort of a conservative impulse towards inertia, that if something was done this way yesterday, if government had this role in the past, it should continue to do it that way tomorrow. And also sort of the politician syllogism, the progressive impulse that something must be done, and this is something, so we must do it. Neither of those are necessarily pro or anti-liberty, but they tend to be utilized far more effectively by the traditional left and right for achieving their goals. So when I'm talking about communicating liberty, I'm not necessarily talking about speaking to a bunch of people who are already more or less on the same page at a conference like this. I'm talking about the communication you would do when you're walking down the street, you meet someone, or you overhear a conversation, you're interested in giving your input, or your friends who are not quite so enlightened as you are. Just the average day communication where we have an opportunity to promote liberty to a wider audience. So something's missing. And what is that? Now, given that we have a great product, it could be the product that's the problem. It could be that the consumers are a problem. It could be that certain people just will never get liberty, and there's just no way we can sell it to a wider audience. Or it could be that the fault is with our marketing. And now, depending on which one of these actually is the problem, our solutions are we could abandon capitalism. And I think that most of us would say that's not our desired solution. If the fault is with the consumers, we could abandon society. But I'm not quite ready to go galt. And so I think that really we have to accept the fact that the fault is probably with our marketing, and our best bet is to improve our presentation. How do we get these ideas out there? So this is Rhetoric 101, Classical Rhetoric 101. There's essentially sort of three basic modes of communication: ethos, logos, and pathos. Now, ethos is appeal to authority, and it's a useful thing if you accept the same authority as the person you're talking to does. So while a quote from Rothbard and a quote from Rand is really great for you guys, if you go offer it to someone who doesn't respect the writings of Rothbard and Rand, they're going to sort of shake their head and not really get it. So it's a dangerous thing to appeal to. Unless you are certain that the person already accepts the same sources of wisdom, in which case they may already be a libertarian. Now, the next one is logos, it's rational argumentation. And that's generally seen as sort of the highest form of argument, but it requires the most work from your audience. It's not anyone's particularly fault for being rationally ignorant. If you work a 60-hour week, most of us, or most of them perhaps, don't go home and read economics textbooks for fun. Some of us do. And, those people, if you give them a complicated ceteris paribus argument about how the minimum wage raises unemployment and it causes all these bad things and it prevents people from getting the training they need to get a later wage, you might get sort of a glazed over look and saying, yeah, but these people should make more money. And it's not necessarily their fault. You're asking a lot from them. You're asking them to parse complicated economics arguments. Which, again, when you're talking to an academic audience or in a conference like this, it's very appropriate. But in your general communication, it may not be as effective as you think it should be. And the last one is pathos, an appeal to emotion. And that is actually probably the most effective way to reach a broad audience. In particular, narrative persuasion, telling stories. I've cited two examples who were very good at that, Rand and Jesus. They may not have agreed on many issues, but they did use some similar methods. Of course, Jesus is famous for telling parables, telling stories. He didn't say that the rules of Christianity are X, Y, and Z. But he would say, well, it's good that this person was walking down the side of the road and helped someone. That's better than the alternative. And he told a story to give us that point, to promote his philosophy of altruism. And Rand, well, she did get into sort of nonfiction writing later on in her career. She started out as a novelist. Her way of promoting her philosophy was showing you a story that exemplified that. And I would guess that at least one or two of us in this room, well, I know at least one of us in this room were influenced by her work and kind of came around that way. So if you can tell a story, if you can't tell a story yourself, be aware of the stories that are out there and refer people to those. Those are the basic things. I think that Aristotle, who came up with these, would have said that logos is the best, followed by ethos and pathos. In reality, it's the exact opposite. Start with pathos, work your way up to ethos, and then finally finish off with logos. Right? That's sort of the 1, 2, 3 punch. All right, so some general tips for when you're talking to people. Just when you're going about in your daily life, have the mindset of being a missionary and not just a monk for liberty. And this is an idea that Lawrence Reed wrote about in The Free Man. It's the idea that it's great that we're all here and we're all getting these great ideas. And if we go home and never tell them to anyone, it's kind of failed. That it's wonderful that we can all sit and appreciate liberty even more at the end of this day. But if we don't go and find more people who also want to believe in liberty, then we've sort of, we've had a good time, but we haven't really pushed the movement forward at all. The next thing is steel manning, which you've all heard of straw man as logical fallacy. It's where you construe the opponent's argument as something weaker than it actually is. Steel manning is sort of the polar opposite. What you do is you seek out and debate the strongest arguments against your position. So don't go debating like the ranting socialist on the street corner, right? It might be fun, it might give you some self-satisfaction, but it's not going to really prove to anyone that you know what you're talking about. Find the strongest voices against your position and do your best to deal with those. And sort of a subset of that is the principle of charity is even when you're dealing with someone who may not have the best arguments, assume the best intentions and the strongest interpretation of their argument that you can. And know your audience. So there's direct and indirect persuasion. Direct persuasion, you're having a conversation with someone and your goal is to persuade that person of something. This is sort of a form of direct persuasion. Indirect persuasion is when you're arguing with someone and you want someone else to realize that your argument is right. And I think that actually comes up very commonly, especially on the internet, that some of you are often on Facebook and often debate political issues on Facebook, and you're not really trying to convince the person who's arguing against you. You're trying to convince the people who are reading the thread. And that is the target audience. And they both require similar techniques, but be aware of who you're actually trying to convince. And the other one is the time scale of interaction. You would use different techniques for talking to someone who you're going to have a long-term relationship with. So your good friends, your partners, stuff like that. Like you can move a little slower. And you can generally ask for more extreme leaps in the long run. If it's just like your dentist, maybe don't try and convince them of anarcho-capitalism. Like just maybe say like, hey, wouldn't it be great if you were able to hire your dental assistants for cheaper? Small steps, know your audience. Treat a discussion as non-adversarial by default. So don't start out assuming you're arguing. You're not supposed to be betting heads. You're seeking the truth together with the person you're debating. Right? You're both trying to find what the truth is. Now, of course, we all know that ours is the truth, but we are seeking it together, and hopefully we'll find out that we are in fact right at the end of it. So you're seeking it. You're not prescribing what the truth is. And part of that is finding common ground. Emphasize the similar desired ends. We don't want a society where the poor are starving in the streets, so us few select capitalists can sit back and drink our champagne and out of the skulls of starving orphan children or something. Like that's not the world we want. We want a world where people are generally wealthier, healthier, and happier, and we just believe that free markets are the best way to achieve that. And this is something I really have a bone to pick. Don't slake a curious person's thirst with a fire hose, right? If someone comes up and is like, I'm kind of curious about learning more about freedom, like free markets, like what is you believe? You don't take your 4-copy of Human Action and shove it down their throat. It will not convince them. Start with something simple. Start with maybe a Freeman article, a Reason article, a short story that has libertarian themes, and build your way up to sort of the heavier stuff. And know when to end a conversation, and this is something I have a lot of trouble with, is I think a lot of us libertarians, myself included, have an indefinite sort of perpetual ability to continue discussing an issue on and on and on. Not everyone shares that same passion for debate, and that you can usually tell. if you're paying close attention, when someone starts shaking, or their eye starts twitching, or they start getting like, walking away from you, that they may not be enjoying the conversation as much as you are. And it's actually better to end it before that point. That the moment you start getting the idea that you're not having a friendly conversation, that you're either putting them on the spot and they feel like they're being, talked down to, or threatened in some way, or if you feel that you are getting angry, if you are losing control of the situation, you're getting so offended by the other person that you are no longer to argue calmly and rationally. End the conversation politely. You can resume it at a later time, but back out and say, I think we should stop discussing this now. It's been a pleasure. And bow out before the rage starts, essentially. All right. So on the note of knowing when to end a conversation, do I have time to talk about Liberty on the Rocks? And yeah? All right. Yeah. All right. Great. So Liberty on the Rocks, if you were out at drinks last night, it's a great organization, international nonpartisan pro-liberty social gatherings. We've now got them in Australia in 5 capital cities. We'd like to see them in every capital city, maybe other ones. So if you know anyone in any of the towns we don't have covered, please get in touch with me, and we'll be happy to start it. Basically, all you have to do is, rent out a pub and find people who like freedom to drink with. Very easy and very rewarding. And the second one, and this is something new, and I'm very excited about it, is Students for Liberty. It's a fantastic organization. It started out in North America a few years ago. We've already got worldwide chapters. We've got African Students for Liberty, European Students for Liberty, and hopefully within the next year we'll have Australian, New Zealand Students for Liberty. I just completed the charter team program along with a bunch of other Australian students, and we're all very excited. We're having a leadership forum by application in Sydney, January 18th, and that's for people who want to start a student group and affiliate it with Students for Liberty, or affiliate their existing student group with us. And we're having a regional conference in Melbourne on that date, which it's pretty far off, but we'll start sending around information soon. So if you're interested in that, please get in touch with me on that email address, or the other one. They both go to my personal account. So this is a great, great organization. And it comes down to the fact that you really have to build these movements from the bottom up. That the younger people you recruit into this movement, the longer they will be with you, and the more they'll be able to spread these ideas. And that goes back to the missionary versus monk thing. That when you think of a monk, you think of a bunch of old men sitting around dying with their ideas. And that's not what we want the Liberty Movement to be. And I don't think that's what it's going to be. If I look around the room right now, there's faces that are younger than me, probably smarter than me, and definitely have a great potential to advance this movement. And it's going well. And it's going to keep going well. That's all.